Income inequality is a huge problem in America, and when you think about solving it, it only seems achievable in European countries like Denmark and Sweden. But there was another country that once had low income inequality and a thriving middle class, the United States of America, post-World War II. And so today I'm going to talk to Professor Robert Reich, who was the Secretary of Labor under President Bill Clinton. What did we do right in the 1950s and 60s that we're not doing today?
Number one, we had strong labor unions. About 35% of all employed people in the private sector belong to a union. Today it's down to fewer than 7%. Number two, we had a Wall Street that was very quiet and boring. Wall Street did not have the authority to mount unfriendly takeovers, did not do it. Number three, we also had a huge amount of public spending on public investments. Early post-war, 1950s, 1960s, a gigantic investment in K through 12 and higher education, and also the entire interstate highway system. We justified all of this as being a means of keeping up with the Soviet Union. In fact, the education expenditures were called the National Defense Education Act. And the highway expenditures, it was the National Defense Highway Act. And we pretended it was all about foreign policy. But actually, it was hugely important to building productivity of the American workforce.
And now the minimum wage back then was also stronger.
Minimum wage was higher. In fact, in 1968, the minimum wage translated in today's dollars would be about $10.60 an hour. The federal minimum wage today is obviously $7.25 an hour, far lower than it was in the late 1960s. And to finance all of this, we had a tax code that had a much, much higher marginal tax on the top incomes. The minimum wage has always been very popular. Always. Over 80% of the public, when asked, should the minimum wage be raised, says yes. But when it comes to actually implementing a change in the minimum wage, Republicans are dealing with a small business community that really hates minimum wage increases and will fight it. And the Democrats are dealing with a labor community that always wanted a minimum wage increase. So what you have is this funny back and forth. It's a dance.
This election, though, there was an interesting dichotomy. A lot of Trump voters actually voted to raise the minimum wage, especially in states like Arizona.
Democrats did a terrible job. Democrats fell into the trap of acting and being the establishment. Hillary Clinton could not disassociate herself somehow from big money and from the corruption that big money creates. The Democrats traditionally have been a party of the working class. The fact that somehow Democrats lost that connection is, to me, one of the most damning indictments of the Democratic Party.
Elaborate more on why you think so many voters voted for Trump.
He created the impression that he was going to shake things up in Washington. I don't think most Trump voters are racists or hateful or misogynists or xenophobes. I think most Trump voters said to themselves, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with business as usual in Washington, and let's get somebody in there who's not an insider. Let's get somebody in there who appears to be a successful business person, and let's see what he does. Give him a chance. But Donald Trump is a fraud. Yeah, he's a fake populist. Trump managed to persuade people that A, he had their interests at heart, not his interests, not the oligarchs and the plutocrats. And secondly, he persuaded people that he was really a successful business person, when in fact he wasn't. We're screwed. Everything I see from Donald Trump makes me worry about the future. The person he has picked for Secretary of Education doesn't believe in public schools. The person he's picked for Treasury Secretary wants to cut back the Dodd-Frank Regulatory Reform Act, which is keeping us from having another too-big-to-fail crisis. The person he's picked for HUD Secretary, Housing and Urban Development, doesn't believe in housing or urban development or the Fair Housing Act. The person he's picked for Attorney General doesn't believe in the Voting Rights Act. He is staffing his government with people who don't believe in what the government does. Trump poses a problem. It's a temporary problem, but it's a large problem.
Why do you say temporary?
Because he will be out of office in 4 years or be impeached.
What's your sense of why he'd be impeached?
Because somebody who has that huge a sense of entitlement is going to overstep
But
the
he'd be
bounds.
impeached by a Republican Congress?
Oh, sure. Nixon was almost impeached.
Yeah, but he broke the law.
Oh, well, I'm talking about breaking the law.
Is there clear evidence to show that, like, Trump has some kind of intent to break the law?
No. No, he'll
Yeah.
break the law simply because he doesn't think the law applies to him.
My final question. If in some stunning act of open-mindedness, Donald Trump were to call you and say, I want to take a meeting with you, Professor, what would you say to him?
I'd say, look, you are in a position of extraordinary power. A lot of people are hurting in America. You have an opportunity to do something for them. You can raise the minimum wage. You can enlarge the earned income tax credit. You can provide even better terms with regard to the 40-hour work week, including more people. You could strengthen unions. You can do a lot of things. But if you don't, you are missing the biggest opportunity of your lifetime. You are going to simply allow inequality to widen. And that is unforgivable.